Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. We are here. We are looking at the crash of the American gaming industry.
Fun. I've got a question for my American friends. How does a $1,000 PS5 Pro sound? Or maybe even a $400 Switch? And I guess if you're Nintendo, you're going to be a little bit more spooked about the Switch too. Now, those are not numbers that I have pulled out of some nether region, at least one on me. No, those are from the worst case predictions of the American Consumer Technology Association. We like games, we would like to buy games, and that's kind of spooky. And you know what's real funny? George Lucas once again is right. How wrong we were when we eye rolled at the Phantom Menace's trade negotiations. Just this time, right? It's not corporate greed, it's not price hikes to cover failing products. No, this is the potential impact of the trade war on gaming. Now, we did see a little bit of that last time we went through this fun period. It's a little more spicy now. And once we actually get into the details, that's where things are different to last time, because beyond the obvious price increases to, say, GPUs or consoles, there's a hidden cost, and that hidden cost is the rapid decline of the physical games market. That's a decline that the big publishers, well, the big console people absolutely want to happen. But for a lot of us, those discs represent ownership, they represent freedom. And this will be bad for those discs. Now, it's not all doom. I'll be able to share how some companies have at least taken steps to try and avoid the worst impact.
I think the only way to avoid a massive drawback in overstating and use of power uh, is to literally get the government involved, and the government has to put regulation on these companies from using a digital format to get around a legal ownership system. That's the only way you're going to be able to do it. Otherwise, these companies are just going to take advantage of the system, and they're going to use that to essentially, basically lease you your game. They're going to lease you just like you lease a car, you lease a phone, you basically lease your house, because even after you've paid for it, you have to pay the taxes on it or you lose your house. So you're always stuck in a lease your whole life. So it's something that you gotta fucking you gotta regulate these sort of things. Otherwise, it just takes advantage of common people, and that's something that has been swept under the bus on both sides. From the Democrats to the Republicans to anybody in between, nobody talks about it, nobody cares about it, and it's fucking annoying.
On your wallet. But that's in the here and now. And big picture, a lot of troubling trends are actually set to accelerate. Now, because you're watching this, I know you want to actually know how the world works, and what we can do is break you free from doom scrolling with just using a few minutes of Brilliant every day. They're today's sponsor, they're awesome, and they're not just another learning platform, they are hands-on problem solving that does not feel like studying. Have you ever wondered, say, how Airbnb owners decide where to buy properties, right? Well, Brilliant has got you analyzing real data basically to try and find the best neighborhoods while also teaching you how data visualization works. So no go. All right, so the big
Anyway,
picture is the USA, China, Canada, and Mexico are all locked in a standoff over implementing trade tariffs. And this is a damn volatile situation. Like, literally, since we first wrote up this script, there have been more tariffs. It really is fun. Now, the core principle, right, is that a tariff is a tax that is charged on imports from an affected country. So imagine a GPU that is manufactured in China. In order to import
so while I do understand this, at the same time, from what I know of politics, which I'm not crazy into, so don't put me at the stake for what I'm about to say, but as far as I know, in the last Trump thing that I've seen is he plans to do reciprocal tariffs. These are tariffs that are it's like if you tax us 100%, we're going to tax you 100%. So at the end of the day, nobody really wins or loses because it essentially equals out because China takes all the money that they from our exported goods, and then we take all the money from their exported goods. So I guess it really comes down to who exports more to the US, and that would be China. China exports just about everything we have ever had here to the US. Because I mean, you can look at the back of anything. You can look at the tag on your fucking t-shirt and it's probably made either somewhere in Asia or China, sometimes Mexico, other times Canada. We import almost everything. Now we do have some export, but not a lot. So if these tariffs are based off of imported goods, so if China wants to send, I don't know, let's just say 100,000 goods here to the US, and the US says no, we're going to tariff those goods 100%, but we only export like 50 things to China. Well, then the person winning the trade war is us, because every single good that they send into the US is where we're collecting the taxes. So it rakes in a fuck ton of money. Now, if it was vice versa and the US exported more than it imported, it's a net loss because I'd just constantly be losing money. But because we don't export very much and we import goddamn everything, then it's not hard to do the maths where you kind of figure out, okay, because we're like such a major importer in a major consumer market, they one can't afford to not sell to us, and two, they also are are about to get raked out the ass for selling to us. So it's a lose lose for them, but it's a massive win for us.
Import that from China to the United States, the company doing the importing will have to pay an extra 20% tariff,
Exactly.
right? And to be very clear here, because I have seen a lot of confusion over this, that's the company buying it into the USA that pays the tariff, not the
Yeah.
company in China who manufactured the GPU, right? So, big picture, the point here is to make foreign made goods more expensive for you to purchase in your local region because whoever is buying those goods in to sell to you has got to pay a 20% tariff. For example, the whole point is that's more expensive so that you will buy local, which in this case would mean you're buying America made computer hardware, consoles, and physical games. But the problem is, those aren't really a thing. And
Nope.
this stuff's not all.
But the point of the tariffs is to essentially put the companies in a position where, in order to be lucrative, they have to make their products here in the US. So we essentially balance the amount that we are bringing in to the amount that we would actually end up shipping out, which one of the biggest fucking costs for any company is distribution. So if Japan isn't having to pay a whole fuck ton of distribution costs in order to get their product from Japan all the way here to the US, and instead set up a factory in the US to produce their goods here, well, then it does come back around and it makes it fucking insanely cheaper. But that depends on if the company's willing to commit it and then get a US labor force and blah blah blah. Or I know some places, like there's a restaurant about literally an hour away from me that is it's ran by all like Southern Americans. And essentially what ended up happening is they took their restaurant, I mean their whole fucking restaurant, from South America, and they brought it here to the US under a full on like work state visa, everything, the whole thing. Everybody's here. Everybody has housing. Everybody's living pretty good. Their fucking restaurant, you can't get a table there, and it's so insanely busy 24/7. Um, so it is doable, but I mean, I can't really find a downside for if you're a multi-million dollar corporation, multi-billion dollar corporation, it's really no issue for you to literally set up a shop in the US, produce your goods here, and then distribute them out to Americans from here in the US. I just I'm looking for a reason of like what would be like the negative. I mean, I guess like probably you have to pay the US workers more. I'm assuming that's probably the biggest negative, but the amount that you're going to cut in distribution costs, because you don't have to uproot the whole fucking company and move it here. You just have to set up a branch here to essentially offset the tariff costs. So you would bring the tariff cost down because you're now doing business with the US, which is essentially what Trump is doing. He's just essentially kind of forcing everybody's hand and saying, "Okay, you want to rake in this money off of our American consumers? Cool. Build here then." So then you'll have a branch of Nintendo that's here building the Nintendo Switch 2, and it'll be easier for them to send it off from here to other parts like Canada and stuff because they're not having to bring it all the way overseas because they'll have a distribution set up here. So yeah, I can't find a reason.
Theory, we've actually seen the impact of this already. The first impact was felt on GPUs. So the RTX 50 cards, right, that whole series, they went up in price because of these tariffs. The retailer Newegg basically confirmed as much in a tweet, tweets that they've now deleted, which is a bit weird, and they later told Tom's Hardware that the increases were, quote, due to a number of factors that are unfortunately out of our control.
So they didn't actually say tariffs because like if they didn't actually say tariffs, then what are we talking about? Uh, yeah, I can't take something like this as like proper evidence without like the actual mention of of said factors. But, if they're keeping that in-house, they're keeping that in-house. But I do remember on the showcase that when they debuted the fucking shit, they debuted it at an absurd fucking price anyway. Like, you expect people to get into PC gaming, but just one of those fucking cards are worth more than fucking a goddamn near top of the line fucking pre-built. Like, why would you even buy one of those cards?
Which to me does read tariffs. But there are other things. I mean, the GPU market is pretty damn volatile and chaotic.
That and if I remember correctly, what they showed for these new GPUs was literally nothing impressive. There was nothing hardly impressive about the new one compared to, say, a 4090, a 4060, a 40 fucking 70, 40, whatever. Okay, the 40 series, you could run fucking anything on basically max, unless you're Monster Hunter Wilds and you haven't fucking properly cut the fat in your game. Goddamn, the performance issues are terrible. Okay. Now, granted, if you have an Intel chip, you're kind of doing it to yourself because them fucking things are trash. If you're running like the 13th gen and the 14th gen, I believe, are the two gens that have issues. Uh, maybe the 12th. Don't quote me on that. I don't know. But the 13th is what I have, and I can't even run high graphics because of how poorly optimized Monster Hunter Wilds is. I have to run it on medium. That's why I stopped uploading it. As you'll notice, I uploaded two or three gameplay episodes, and it was I running it on medium the whole fucking time was annoying as shit.
Nvidia didn't ship enough cards anyway, a lot of accusations of paper launches, so this whole fluctuation in GPU prices kind of passed under the radar, because basically, we're all kind of pissed at Nvidia. Now, even if GPUs were previously exempt from tariffs until now, no one is really surprised by expensive GPUs in the current market. So, GPUs, expensive, not really a surprise. But the worst impact on your wallet could very much be yet to come. So here's the deal. Manufacturers were allegedly stockpiling newly produced GPUs before the new year, right? With anything that was already in the US exempt from these tariffs because it had already been imported, it was in a US warehouse. And that means that anything newly produced and then imported would be subject to the tariffs.
This is exactly what I was saying. The whole point of these tariffs is to get them to set up some sort of operation in the US so the US can get a cut of them exporting their goods based here. Like I said, they don't have to move the whole fucking company. They just have to take a branch and set it up here. And then they can distribute from here, they can produce here, and blah, blah, blah. It brings in American jobs and it gets people fucking working in different industries and places and blah, blah, blah. You know, there's plenty of space here in the US for these types of production and manufacturing jobs.
Well, that would increase the consumer prices even further. So that kind of sucks. But for gaming especially,
And then once it is distributed here and made here, it becomes then again cheaper because then we don't have to pay as much because they're not paying as much to get it here to begin with.
it also sucks, right? And not just for PC players. So that group that I mentioned, the Consumer Trade Association, they estimated these tariffs could cost US consumers $7 billion more dollars for consoles. Just quite a few dollars. Now, the
Yeah.
impact here, right? It's more than just your wallet. It is going to go across the industry, almost every aspect of it. Right now, okay? There is no evidence to suggest that digital products are going to be impacted by these tariffs. And that's because there are various trade agreements that are in place to protect digital goods. Now, that does depend on everyone honoring those agreements. Maybe they won't, but let's assume they will. Let's assume digital will be fine, because we got to talk about what we know would not be fine, and that's physical games. Before doing this story and one previously, I had no idea about this. So
Yeah, I could 100% see them taking advantage of the situation and saying, "Sorry, we can't do any of these anymore because it just costs way too much."
do you know where the majority of American game discs come from? The answer is Mexico. So that's basically where they are manufactured. And that means that if the Mexican tariffs continue, publisher costs for making physical games will increase. Now, there is some good news here, right? The estimates are suggesting that this would be just under $1 per disc. Now, yeah, that's millions of dollars across millions of discs. It's not huge, but it's also not the whole story. And this is where I'm going to cut to a analyst, Matt Piscatella. He's been in the analyst biz for like 20 plus years, bit of a legend, works for Circana, and he predicts one of two outcomes from this, right? His first prediction: publishers can increase the cost of physical games and also of digital games to ensure price parity. That would be them passing the cost onto your wallet, but then, of course, making it, fair and increasing the price of the digital games to match. Of course, those digital games not being impacted by the tariffs.
I don't know. So, like, I'm not saying that this wouldn't happen because I could 100% see it happening, but I would also see a massive, like, decline in sales for games because people are already unwilling to pay $70 unless the game is really fucking good. So the that would just put the game that you have to make on an even higher threshold than it was at before, making it even more difficult to even want to produce a game.
So that would be sneaky, sneaky business if they did choose to do it. The other thing they could do, though, is also not really good because it's just choosing not to produce physical discs at all. Now, they could sell the latter as a consumer good, basically saying, "You look, we need price parity between them. We're not going to do these physical things anymore. We're going to protect prices for the 60% of the market who are playing digital games." They could probably write up a press release selling that as a good thing.
Only 60% is playing digital? I thought it'd be a lot more, to be honest. I thought there'd be a little bit more of a disparity.
Now, even if the tariffs keep being delayed, right? Because we don't know if this will ultimately end up coming to pass. What we do know for sure, though, is that there's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainty is bad for business. Uncertainty can also be an excuse. There's a lot of companies doing layoffs and various things based on these tariffs, even though they don't know if the tariffs are actually coming. And it will often seem like, well, the uncertainty of tariffs is just an excuse to do layoffs that some companies plan to do anyway. As for this, though, why would you commission several million discs for a game releasing in 3 months if you've got no idea how much they'll end up costing in the end? But of course, it's not just that. It's also the consoles that play those discs. And you know it is serious when Nintendo, Sony, and Microsoft all decide to band together as friends. Now, that's what they did in 2019, whenever these tariffs were proposed, right? They basically banded together and they warned that a 25% price increase would mean that a games console would be, quote, out of reach for holiday spending, that consumers would have to spend 840 million more.
People won't. That's just not gonna happen. As much as they would like to think that this would happen, it just really I don't think it would actually happen. See, because here's the deal, right? $840, you can go get a pre-built laptop on sale, probably a year or two old, and you could game better than you would ever game on any console ever. So imagine if you could do that with a laptop. I'm why would you even need to get a console? I mean, honestly, because like Xbox is not exclusive anymore. They've already been on several different releases saying that they're giving away their IPs to both PlayStation, Nintendo, fucking anybody who wants them. They are literally selling out. Okay, their goal is gaming for everyone, is what they say. So you don't have to worry about Xbox exclusive anymore. And PlayStation's already started merging their stuff into Steam as well. So if neither console has in let's be honest, we don't need any Nintendo IP. We know what they have to offer. They could just keep doing their thing over there. Okay. So we don't have to worry about that. So the only thing we're worried about is PlayStation and Xbox, neither of which are exclusive to their own console brands anymore. So less so for PlayStation, but they're coming around. Just as I just looked at a game trailer for AI Limit or something like that is what it's called. Uh, I looked at a game trailer for that, and it's also coming out for PC and PlayStation day one. So if I'm a console gamer and I'm seeing I have to pay $840 for a fucking Xbox or for a fucking PlayStation, I'll just go get a fucking computer. Any sort of run of the mill laptop in like the past like 5 years will put you on a different tier of gaming than the latest console will ever put you on. That's insane. That's insane.
Dollars on their Christmas consoles. And because they did that in 2019, they got themselves an exception. In 2025, they have not got an exception. And of course, there's a big problem if you're Nintendo and you've got a Switch 2 coming. I mean, yeah, it would suck for Xbox and PlayStation, but, if Nintendo
Yeah, if Xbox was smart, they should have fucking been manufacturing their stuff here to begin with. And the only reason that these companies even do this shit overseas is because it's cheaper. They cut cost by underpaying unfortunate workers to fucking essentially put their product together. And I find that ridiculous. I mean, come on, let's be honest.
Nintendo got disproportionately impacted, I'm sure they wouldn't be that sad. Because, of course, their follow ups, right? The next generation, that's, well, still going to be a few years. And being real with you, it is the span of the next few years that actually matters. I'm pretty sure you've noticed there's a little bit of a, recalibration of the whole game board, right?
I still don't know how I feel about the Switch 2 with the Joy-Cons snapping in rather than sliding in, because like when they slide in, like you have like a good firm hold on it. But when they snap in, it's just too easy for that to get weakened over time, and then it just fucking literally just falls apart.
Right? In terms of the world politics, multipolarity, all those fun things that are totally out of the scope of this channel. But suffice to say, shit is changing. And now these businesses are
Yeah, I
trying to
don't like
work
that
out
at all. That's literally what's gonna happen when these little like snap-on fucking things get weak.
scope of this channel. But suffice to say, shit is
Bonk. That's gonna be you in like 2 years after using this fucking console. Nintendo Switch 2, Joy-Cons not staying in controller. Nintendo Switch 2, Joy-Cons not staying in console.
changing. And now these businesses are trying to work out how they basically survive and how to not price themselves out of the market. And they've been doing that for the last 5 years because they have seen this on the horizon. All three have moved some of their production outside of China. But even with that, the US is still an absolutely huge import market. This was pointed out by
Yeah, I didn't think about that too. Um, they could move production to like a neighboring country, depending on their relationship with said country. Unfortunately, China's got a lot of fucking enemies. A lot of people don't like China.
Daniel Ahmad of Nico Partners that post 2019, US imports for Chinese products were reduced in real shipping terms. But, right? console imports remained above 75% of the market. So that actually means that console imports are still pretty damn exposed to all of this risk. And it does make sense. Like, rebuilding a whole infrastructure to build all those consoles will take time and money. And that's a lot of work to build a parallel production line. That's going to take time. That's going to take money that will be passed down to us. And of course, as the first to launch, Nintendo.
Nah, you don't need to fucking take that bullshit. I mean, let's be honest. If they fucking jump up the price instead of moving production, it's a business move that's scummy and it's under the fucking table anyway. So you might as well just fucking not buy the shit. And then when their market starts to crash, they'll be like, oh, fuck. And then they'll go make the investment that they should have made in the beginning. And it wouldn't have affected their market hardly at all. Because once the production's up and running and they start selling consoles again, this time from a more local source, it saves them on distribution, which they make back, and then you get essentially the same consoles for probably around $700. I'm assuming is what they're going to sell them for. The new ones, because I don't think they'll stay at the $500 price point that they were when they got launched. But as far as like the PlayStation Pro or whatever the fuck the PS5 Pro is that the latest one for or for PlayStation? I don't see the allure of it anyway, to be honest. Honestly, I think it might just like force everybody to start playing on PC, which I'm totally fine with.
Has likely made the biggest move here.
I think they
David
said
Gibson,
that they were going to
another
sell
analyst,
theirs for
pointed out that
700
after
anyway.
2019, Nintendo started on a plan to basically do as much maneuvering as they could to move 50% of their production to other regions. A big example is, say, Vietnam, and it does seem like Vietnam is a real beneficiary of, well, companies just moving their manufacturing elsewhere. The plan basically being they're still going to make a shitload of consoles in China, it's just they'll go to other places and the Vietnam consoles will go to America. But that will not mean there is no impact on your wallet, because the cost of moving your whole production, well, that will have to be recouped somewhere. Let's talk worst case scenarios, and to be honest with you, right? There's some spooky shit to come, but it's actually on top of shit that's already real spooky. If you've watched all of our videos, you may know this, but the TLDR, right, is that when you actually adjust for inflation, premium console spending has been remarkably flat over the years, right? Last year, 2024, actually saw a sales decline. So the vibes have not
Yep.
been good, right?
Well, yeah, because last year, fucking PlayStation was trying to charge max amount of money for a console that they literally changed nothing to. They repackaged the same PlayStation 5, took the disc drive out, and then tried to sell a digital version of a console that had the same exact frame generation as the console before that. No change in FPS at all. All the hardware exactly the fucking same. All right. I mean, at least when Xbox did it, they were blatant. They were kind of cutthroat with the fact that the revamped Series X was simply it kind of got like a memory boost, and that was it. Like I remember seeing the what do you call it? The not the trailer, but the reveal or whatever for the digitized fucking Xbox Series X, and it literally was the exact same as the first Series X, but with double the space, which is cool. So I think that was brilliant because it was actually cheaper to buy the upgraded console than it was to buy a Seagate card to plug into your Xbox.
Right? In basically the games industry. And this could, well, change things a bit. So, if these tariffs continue, estimates are that console sales will drop by 57% at worst. Bear in mind, they were already kind of low in the last few years, and the Consumer Trade Association thinks that it will get worse. And yeah, I mean, you've got Sony basically keeping par with the PS4 generation, with the PS5 generation. I believe they may have slightly outpaced it, but Microsoft is behind. So it does seem that those consoles.
Microsoft's always been behind, but that's just because they've been shooting themselves in the foot for years. All the main games that people used to play on Xbox, they don't anymore. Like most people moved to a different console because the exclusives weren't even worth being exclusive. I mean, you could name any one that you think was a good exclusive in the comments, and I guarantee somebody's gonna respond to you and explain to you why that has no longer been the game series that they are into anymore. And yeah, Xbox's philosophy on what makes them a gaming company has been lost to the wind for I don't know how long. And you know how I know? Because they didn't even keep Halo alive. They just let it die. They let 343 kill the Halo franchise, their flagship franchise. They were even like getting to the point to where they were going to push for a Cortana AI. Do you know what happened? They fucking killed her. Cortana is dead. Beep bop boop beep. She's dead.
Console sales basically are on the downtrend anyway. Now, if you start slapping on 10, 20,
So yeah, they gave
25%,
up on
right,
that.
of an upcharge, well, shit, those console sales are going to go down even more. And even if that stuff doesn't happen, the risk, the uncertainty will impact how much it costs to do things, right? And that means it will be passed down to you. I mean, a luxury good like a new console or a GPU is already something that you really think about before buying. That
I really don't think it's gonna become that big of an issue because like once you hit like a certain threshold for anything like that, um, the market immediately will correct to a point to where people just won't buy. And when these companies aren't able to essentially kind of force everybody to purchase these things, which is exactly what they're gonna try to do. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of dumb fucking people out there, right? They're gonna be like, "Oh man, it's $800." Well, I guess, but everybody else with common sense is gonna not buy the thing, and then they're going to see a massive market decline, and then they will realize that their folly of not just doing the initial upfront investment of making it in the country and then exporting out of the country because they don't have to move the whole thing. This is what I was saying. They don't have to move the whole thing. They just need to set up a branch, some sort of production, distribution here in the US so that it becomes an American export rather than an American import. The US gets some kickback. It becomes cheaper for the people in the US because you'll be able to get it locally easier. So, I don't know. I think the initial upfront investment is the win-win scenario for the not only the company but for the consumers. And if they want to just move it to Vietnam because Vietnam doesn't have the tariffs that China does or Japan or the Koreas or India maybe, and they were like, "Hey, you know what? We'll just move it to Vietnam. Vietnam has a good trade agreement with the U.S." But then what happens when something changes in Vietnam and then they don't have the same trade agreement anymore? The only way to get a crystal clear agreement for your goods is to put them in the US. That's the only way to do it. Because yeah, you can get around it for a little bit if you put it in another country, but what happens if a trade agreement falls through with that country? Well, now you're fucked. But if you have it in the US, well, then you're dealing directly with the US. So there's no middleman, there's no toting the line.
you've got to justify. And that is harder if you have 20% more cost. You're not alone if that is your feeling.
Yeah, because there is going to be people who will buy it. I mean, I'm going to be 100% honest. Obviously, there's people out there who wallets, they ain't really hurting like that. But somebody like me, nah. Nah, and I'm not poor by any means. I got a fucking PC I'm recording on right now. Got my PlayStation right there, my Xbox right there, my Switch over there. I got everything I could ever want. But I just don't see the draw to it, to be honest.
There's analysts. One example, Joost van Dreden. Maybe that's his name. I tried. Anyway, he suggests that even with the best possible outcome, right? And a new generation of console spiking interests, that console sales would be dropping again as we approach 2030. I suppose that would be the GTA 6 sales bubble finally going away, and us realizing, I don't know, gaming's dead. So, in the worst case, this actually could be building up to be the weak
I don't think so. I actually think that we're on the upswing for games, to be honest, because a lot of the really bad games, which is primarily came out of the US, oddly enough, a lot of those games have seen their own market correction, and those people have now been put out of a job. At least I hope they did, because otherwise their next game is going to fail the same exact way. And they're going to be pulling an Ubisoft right now looking for somebody to buy their company. Because even though Assassin's Creed sold decently, decent is not what they needed. They needed above and beyond. They needed like GTA 6 level numbers because that's how bad their company was tanked. I think their company got tanked like fucking 60 to 80% value or something like that. I mean, it fucking took a hit. So they needed Assassin's Creed to essentially, it had to be like 15, 20 mil game to recoup that amount of cost. Now, maybe you can make an argument that it did well enough that it'll keep them afloat, but I really don't think that's the case. Even with their own launcher, I don't think there's that many people on there. I mean, I did see the post. There was like congrats on 2 million posts. Not enough. Way not enough. I guarantee the amount of budget they spent on that fucking game, they need a lot more than 2 mil.
Biggest games market in a decade. What happens to the games industry as a whole in this worst case scenario? Well, physical games would slide further and further into obsolescence. If you care about preservation, that's not good. If you want to be an absolute bandit and borrow a game from your friend instead of downloading it again or buying it, rip that. Obviously, PCs and laptops would be far more expensive under these tariffs, so they would not escape fully. But the PC market actually might be uniquely more resilient because you can use your PC for like more than just like what a games console.
I mean, a low class PC will do more than your current games console. That's what I keep telling everybody. The best case scenario for you if you want to get into gaming is find a PC you really like, wait till that sucker goes on sale, or wait until, like, I don't know about other countries, but here in the US, we have what is called a Black Friday. That is the time that everybody goes out and buys because everything is down 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70%. That's when you buy the shit. You can get a brand new PC for a quarter of the price. Whether it's a tower PC or a laptop, whatever you found that you like the hardware for, and you're like, oh yeah, that's the one. That's when you get it.
Console does. And that means if you are going to be spending a bunch of money doing that on your PC, well, that's probably where it's going to go over something like a console. Now, that is, of course, if audiences don't just switch to, phones and tablets, which would be sad, or maybe settle and like
Isn't mobile like the number one gaming platform though?
streaming platforms like, GeForce Now and stuff. Kind of hard to say. Digital spending for PC would likely continue to grow, basically, but that doesn't necessarily mean more games. And if it's anything like the trends that have dominated the last few years, it'll basically go like this. Less full-priced premium game sales because people have got to be a bit more smart with their money in an economic pinch. Less next-generation games as developers basically stay with a far larger audience. They stick to what they're doing. You'll see more free-to-play games that have got a lower barrier to entry and more microtransactions to monetize that audience, and probably more microtransactions that are geared to be hyper-premium. Because the thing about money is, it all actually does have to go somewhere, right? And as wealth inequality, changes, well, why do you think that Riot are doing $250 skins for League of Legends? Because, motherfuckers buy them because they've got a lot of money.
That's a that's the perfect point. They don't ever put out skins like that to target the average Joe. They put out skins like that because they want the whales. They want the people who are masochistic with how much they play League, that they will buy that shit.
Money maybe you don't have. I'm now going to try to do something real dangerous, making predictions. But I actually think I'm going somewhere with this, right? So when, say, an animal is backed into a corner, it's going to fight for its life. If a mother thinks that the baby is under threat, it's going to just be so much more, powerful, aggressive, whatever. Well, whenever our games companies are a bit backed into a corner, they're maybe facing some systemic decline, how are they going to get more money? Well, I think I know actually. I think we're going to see the growth of in game advertising. We recently talked about it in a video that was really focused on Steam's policies. But if you watch that video, you'll know it wasn't just about Steam. It was about product placement, stuff that we see in, say, well, the Kojima production games as one example. And there's pressure, and this pressure does not necessarily have to come from within the games companies. EA's shareholders were the ones asking Andrew Wilson about ads, because to a game publisher, free money's free money. You've got eyeballs, why don't you show an ad and monetize those eyeballs? And as we covered in the Steam video, there's loads of ways you can get around Steam's policy. And while lots of this could be driven by American companies dealing with American problems, well, if ads are coming, that'll come to you. That means that regardless of where you are, you will be paying for the trade war. If American spending decreases, those costs have got to be recouped somewhere else. It's all part of a global network that is under pressure, right? That money has got to come from somewhere. And if you
Yeah, I still think. I mean, you could do it that way. I guess I didn't even think about that. Is you could use advertising as a way to make up as a way to recoup that cost. But I think that's already like such an overspent market because you really don't make any of your money back when it comes to advertising. The point is just to get eyes. But as far as I know, from anything advertising I've ever seen, it's never really recouped the cost that you spent doing the advertising. Uh, I'm just trying to think of like, because obviously the best solution for them as a company is to take a subset group, move them to the US, have them do production and blah blah blah, manufacturing, all that shit in distribution. That's what I was looking for. Here in the US, out to different countries that surround the US and blah blah blah. And take advantage of the consumer market at a home base. And then you can take part of the staff that you sent over and just have them once everybody's fully trained up and things are being produced like they should be, and then take them back over to wherever it is they came from to help get it set up, and then that would be how I would do it. I would do the initial investment up front. Yeah, are we going to take a hit? Sure, but we're going to save a fuck ton of money, and we have direct connection with that consumer market now, whereas before we went through third or even fourth parties to even get our product into the country. It just seems like a no-brainer to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm dumb, but that's what I would do. I'm a multinational, multi-billion, trillion dollar company. I got the fucking money to set up production. Let's not pretend like they don't. Come on now.